One of my go-to rentals from Blockbuster was Star Wars Starfighter for the PS2. Released in 2001, this was an interesting time for Star Wars as a whole, with the franchise being reinvigorated with the release of Phantom Menace. There was a lot of merchandising and marketing being pushed at this time, with an overwhelming amount of video games available. Between both home consoles and PCs, from the year 1999 to 2001, almost 24 Star Wars video games had been released. That's a lot of games, and in some way I feel like it hurt the brand. It was almost a quantity over quality approach, and games that might have deserved more spotlight were passed over. There were also just more interesting games being released in general, so this was only ever just a rental for me. Starting up the game, it's a little lackluster. There's no big animated intro like you might come to expect from other games. The menu has dark tones, but you can see a lot of the Naboo planet aesthetic, which is carried throughout the entire game, which is nice. Launching the campaign, you're hit with the classic Star Wars text scroll, which sets up the context for the story. In short, this is pre-Episode 1, prior to the Naboo invasion, with the Trade Federation preparing for their attack. There are 3 different pilots, all with their own stories which you play through, eventually all coming together as their interests align. It was at this point that I noticed how well the music was mixed within the game. I'm not sure how much that is due to the developers or simply to John Williams' incredible soundtrack. When you do get to the animated segments, they're pretty much on par with what you would expect from a 2001 PS2 game. The first level is simply going through a training simulation, which is pretty common within video games, though I always feel like the training level approach slows the pace to the player's gameplay. Some games integrate this better than others. I would say this example here was average. As I progressed through the game, I felt like the training didn't give me enough information to learn all of the controls. There's no button callouts, so I kinda just fumbled through everything to get the hang of it, and as features were unlocked later in the game, I had to learn how to use these without any mention of the corresponding buttons. I also found fault with the targeting system. It just doesn't seem to want to lock onto the logical target, in some instances choosing to target the enemy behind another enemy rather than the one in front closest to you. This got frustrating trying to navigate bigger maps looking for a time-sensitive target. There was a little bit of a learning curve understanding the physics of the Starfighters. Hitting the brake seems to allow you to space drift and whip your ship around in a 180-degree motion, predating the space drifting from Last Jedi, which I was very critical of. In most aerial combat simulation games, you would typically want to lead your shots, aiming ahead of the plane to anticipate where the opposing ship is traveling so your shots land on the target. Doing that here didn't seem to provide me with the best results. I had better accuracy aiming directly at the targets and had to adjust my strategy accordingly. Also, the invisible boundaries to the maps would often rubber band me back into the map in a disorienting manner, often inverting my ship. There are sections where you would think to fly into an open area and reposition your ship for your attack, but the game will force you to remain in close quarters. This got frustrating several times, one of which when it seemed logical to fly past a turret and fire from behind. This turned out to be a boundary of the map and bounced my plane off the invisible wall. Another time later in the game, it wants you to fly through a canyon filled with enemy tanks for what seems to be no strategic advantage, as you are escorting a convoy that can simply fly above the canyons. The voice acting, while not necessarily bad, does seem to feel a little disconnected from the universe they're in.
We've got to do something. We can't let them invade Naboo.
We?
It just sounds like the actors performing lines rather than characters living in this universe. This is more apparent during the combat, where both the written dialogue and the performance are totally unconvincing.
Here comes another wave.
I got that hotshot cadet. He'll be a hotspot when I'm done with him. Not today, I think.
The one exception to this is the voice actor who plays the character Nim, Charles Rocket, a Saturday Night Live alumni who acted in movies like Dumb and Dumber, Dances with Wolves, and Titan AE to name a few. He actually had quite a career. A lot of voice work he did for television I enjoyed as a kid, some including the new Batman adventures, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and Static Shock. The introduction of his character in the game and the performance he gave made me a little more interested in what was actually going on in the story. He also delivered one of the only lines that actually made me laugh out loud.
Put the blaster down.
Not before I take a good look at the only person ever put me behind bars. Now I'll kill you.
Along with the introduction of Nim, you finally get to issue commands to your wingmates, utilizing the D-pad to direct them to attack your targets or cover you while you're on the offensive. This made the gameplay a little more exciting for me, coupled with the added features of plasma bombs and proton torpedoes. Also, while the prior missions felt like a one-man's campaign, Nim, who captains a fleet of space pirates, had missions and objectives that were easier to connect with. Defending your pirate brethren from the onslaught of attacking droids by taking on optional objectives like disabling dropships from releasing tanks felt more of a necessity. For myself at least, I respond differently to being a lone man on a mission compared to a team member trying to preserve others' lives that you're interacting with. Also, without the context of the events of Episode 1, your motivation for the missions with the other pilots, Reese and Vanna, just seems low. Honestly, I had a hard time following the story and really didn't feel a connection to what was going on until halfway through the game. Had I not read a synopsis for the plot of the game and had the background knowledge of the Trade Federation from the prequel movies, I don't think I would really grasp what was happening. In my opinion, the game struggles to effectively tell the story through the earlier levels and fails to develop the characters and the circumstances surrounding them. With only 14 levels to play through, you can easily get through all the missions within a few hours. All my collected gameplay up to mission 11 was only an hour and 40 minutes in total. I had a lot of blunders and restarts within what was recorded. A better player could easily cut this time down further. The short campaign is great for a weekend rental, but not ideal for a game you want to continuously revisit. All criticism considered, I did have a fun time playing the game. I have a fondness for Episode 1 related games and merchandise, so I am a bit biased. For all the complaints that can be made about the prequel movies, I think what it got right was the characters and crafts that it created while expanding the Star Wars universe. Oftentimes, I find that the games of the prequel era tell a better story and give us a better understanding of the Star Wars universe at this point of time, better than what the movies did themselves. The later levels in the game do get exciting, and I had a blast fighting off droid starfighters while attacking freighters and other Trade Federation ships. I wish that the whole game had been like these last levels, with intense combat and emotion-driven objectives. I should note that there was an Xbox Special Edition version that was released, which included more features than what was packaged in the PS2 version, though the PS2 version seems to have better ratings across the board when compared to the Xbox version. It's perhaps of no surprise that this game, one that struggles with its storytelling but excels with its action, was later ported to the arcades. Tsunami Visual Technologies would go on to release Star Wars Starfighter on their Tsumo arcade platform. In closing, I think it's important to remember the time of which this was released. This came out only 4 months after the release of the PS2 console in North America, and during a period where a lot of excitement surrounded Star Wars. It's something that was important to the experience of the game, but is lost when you revisit it more than 20 years later. This and the sequel that would follow, Jedi Starfighter, I rented quite often and love these games for what they were at that time. If I had to give it a rating, I would say it's a 6 out of 10. If you're a Star Wars fan like me, and a Phantom Menace fan like me, then I would say there's enough here for it to be a decent weekend rental.